They say every tattoo tells a story. But for pirates, tattoos weren't just decoration. They were codes, warnings, trophies, even maps written on skin. Imagine sailing under a black flag, where every mark burned into your flesh could mean the difference between life and death. A coiled serpent etched on a wrist wasn't tea. Just tit might reveal the battles you had fought, the crimes you had committed, or the gods you prayed to before stepping into a storm. Pirate tattoos were more than ink. They were secret languages whispered through scars and symbols, and few outsiders ever understood them. But today, you will. Before we dive into the forgotten world of pirate tattoos, take a moment to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps this channel uncover more hidden corners of history, stories that textbooks never dared to tell. Now, let's pull back the curtain. The first thing you need to know is that pirates didn't invent tattoos, but they carried them farther than most could imagine. Many sailors encountered tattooing for the first time in faraway lands: Polynesia, the Philippines, Japan. The practice was exotic, mysterious, sometimes terrifying. In some cultures, tattoos were sacred marks of strength and protection. Pirates, who lived their lives balanced on the edge of death, couldn't resist adopting them. To wear a tattoo was to claim a piece of another world, to carry protection, power, and sometimes sorcery under the skin. And for men who might not live past the next storm, what could be more tempting? But pirate tattoos weren't random souvenirs. They carried hidden meanings. A simple anchor, etched in shaky lines with gunpowder and rum, was more than just a sailor's symbol. It declared survival a man who had crossed the Atlantic and returned alive. A skull on the forearm wasn't simply a warning. It was a reminder of mortality, a grim oath that the bearer had stared death in the eye and would never bow to fear again. To their enemies, it was terrifying. To fellow pirates, it was a badge of honor. There are accounts of pirates captured by navies, their bodies examined with fascination. Authorities wrote about men covered in marked daggers across the chest, dragons curling over the shoulder, stars scattered like constellations. These weren't mindless doodles, they were passports, ways to identify one another in foreign ports where betrayal lurked at every corner. Imagine two strangers in a smoky tavern, one rolling up his sleeve to reveal a dagger tattoo, the other nodding with recognition. Without a word spoken, they knew they shared a code. One of the most haunting aspects of pirate tattoos was their connection to death. Many bore crosses or crucifixes inked directly over the heart. It wasn't just faith, it was insurance. Pirates believed these marks might protect them from drowning, or at least deliver their souls safely if the sea claimed them. Some even tattooed prayers in crude Latin, etched by unsteady hands. In the chaos of cannon fire and splintered decks, those words were the only lifeline to eternity. And then there were the trophies. Pirates often tattooed symbols to mark victories: a sinking ship, a coin, sometimes the date of a battle. For them, the skin was a living journal. No paper could be trusted. No diary kept safe on a ship that might be burned or seized. But the flesh-scarred, permanent, unstealable was the perfect record. A pirate's body told the story of his life, and when he died, the record died with him. But there's a darker layer to all this. Some tattoos weren't chosen. They were punishments. Criminals branded in ports with marks of shame often tried to hide them by adding pirate symbols. A thief's branded hand could be remade into a skull, a letter of disgrace reshaped into a dagger. Tattoos became camouflage, rewriting identities. And in the lawless brotherhood of pirates, it didn't matter who you were before. Your tattoos could erase the past and carve a new legend. One of the most chilling stories comes from sailors who describe seeing pirates with tattoos of gallows on their arms. Not as warnings, but as defiance. It was as if they mocked the hangman, daring him to do his worst. These men wore their death sentences before the ropes ever touched their necks. For them, every day alive was stolen time, and their tattoos screamed that truth. Pirates also used tattoos for navigation. Some had stars inked across their arms or chests, crude maps of constellations they relied on at sea. Others carried compass roses on their hands, symbols believed to guide them home, even in darkness. For men adrift in endless horizons, a star on the skin might be the only promise of direction. Was it superstition? Perhaps. But when storms blotted out the sky and compasses spun wildly, faith in ink could mean survival. What makes pirate tattoos truly fascinating is how they blended fear with beauty. Imagine a pirate in the candlelight of a Caribbean tavern. His arms covered in snakes and crosses, his chest a battlefield of scars and ink. To outsiders, it was horrifying. To other pirates, it was poetry. Every mark was a verse, every scar a chorus. Together, they created a song of defiance that no chain or gallows could silence. Yet not all tattoos were grim. Some were deeply personal. Hearts marked with initials, names of lovers etched before long voyages. Tiny birds inked on ankles, meant to symbolize freedom or the hope of returning to land. In the midst of violence, pirates still carried human desires. Love, hope, memory. These softer tattoos are perhaps the most haunting of all, because they remind us that beneath the myth of monsters and marauders, pirates were human beings clinging to the things that made life worth living. Now picture the process. No electric needles, no sterile studios. Pirate tattoos were carved with whatever was at hand: sharpened bone, rusty nails, sewing needles. Ink came from gunpowder mixed with rum, soot blended with grease. The process was brutal, painful, bloody, and often infected. Men screamed, fainted, sometimes died from the wounds. Yet they returned again and again for more. Why? Because pain was part of the ritual. To endure it proved loyalty, courage, and the will to live, marked forever outside the reach of law or church. There are even whispers that pirates believed tattoos could protect against bullets. Marks over the chest, symbols of invincibility. Was it true? No. But in the heat of battle, belief itself could make a man fearless, and fearlessness was deadlier than steel. A pirate charging into musket fire with a chest full of defiant ink was a terror no navy wanted to face. Tattoos also revealed pirate spirituality, a mix of Christianity, paganism, and folk magic. Some bore mermaids, half goddess and half curse, reminders of the sea's seduction and danger. Others wore dragons, borrowed from Asian cultures, symbols of strength and eternal power. Still others carried snakes, both as warnings and as charms against poison. Pirate faith was chaotic, born from a life where God seemed both cruel and necessary. Their skin became shrines, chaotic collages of belief stitched together by blood and needle. But there's a question worth asking. Were these tattoos truly secret codes, or have we romanticized them? Historians struggle with this mystery. Few original pirate bodies remain, and descriptions are fragmentary. What we do know comes from trial records, journals of sailors, and occasional illustrations. Did pirates really hide maps and tattoos, as legends claim? Did some carry riddles etched into their flesh, leading to buried gold? There are tantalizing hints, but no proof. And perhaps that's the greatest secret of all. The tattoos are gone, and with them, the final truths. Still, the legends endure. There's a tale of a pirate whose entire back was inked with a great serpent devouring its tail, the ancient symbol of eternity. When captured, he refused to explain it. Was it a warning, a code, a map? No one ever knew. He was hanged before he could speak, and the mystery died with him. But the story survived, passed from sailor to sailor, until it became part of pirate lore. To this day, pirate tattoos haunt our imagination. Modern sailors still ink anchors, swallows, and compasses on their skin, echoes of a world where such symbols meant life, death, or freedom. Every tattoo shop in a port city carries this ghostly inheritance. When you see someone with a skull inked across their arm, you're not just looking at art, you're seeing centuries of rebellion, survival, and myth. And maybe, just maybe, a whisper of the pirates who started it all. Because tattoos, like the sea, never forget. There is something unnerving about the idea that a man's very skin could become his diary, his passport, his prayer, and his curse. The more you look at pirate tattoos, the more you realize they weren't simply about identity. They were about survival in a world where nothing was permanent, where ships sank, loot vanished, comrades betrayed, and every sunrise could be your last. The skin was the one canvas that couldn't be stolen. That permanence, that defiance, made tattoos sacred to pirates in ways that often shocked the societies that captured them. When colonial authorities hanged pirates and stripped their corpses for examination, reports often mention marks upon their bodies. Some officials saw them as devilish, proof that these men had given themselves to pagan rituals. Others were fascinated, almost respectful, recording them in detail. They wrote about roses inked in crude black lines, daggers dripping with red pigment, suns and moons circling shoulders. To the outside world, these marks proved savagery, but to pirates, they were symbols of belonging. If the law branded them criminals, they branded themselves with their own banners, declaring allegiance not to any king, but to the Brotherhood of the Sea. One powerful theme in pirate tattoos was fate. Many carried dice etched on their forearms or playing cards marked on their skin. These were not decorations, but declarations of philosophy. To a pirate, life itself was a gamble. Every raid, every storm, every chase by a warship was a roll of the dice. Tattoos of cards and dice reminded them that fortune ruled everything. Luck could crown you with gold one day and drag you into the depths the next. By wearing these marks, pirates embraced chaos. It was both surrender and defiance, acknowledging fate while laughing at it. Another striking theme was transformation. Men who abandoned their old lives often used tattoos to erase who they once were. A runaway sailor might cover his family name with an anchor. A deserter from the Navy could blot out his branded letters with a serpent. Tattoos allowed men to shed their pasts, to reinvent themselves entirely. The sea offered freedom, but it was ink that gave that freedom a visible form. Each needle mark was a rebirth. And in a sense, every pirate was twice born, once from their mother and once from the sting of the needle. But tattoos weren't only personal, they could be collective. Crews sometimes adopted shared symbols, tiny secret marks known only to them. Imagine a circle of men in the glow of lanterns below deck, one after another pricking the same symbol into their skin. It could be as simple as a cross, a star, or a set of lines only they understood. It was a vow, a pact, a promise that even if they were scattered or captured, that mark tied them together. Brotherhood carved in blood and soot. These secret crew tattoos were invisible flags, banners that could never be lowered. Some pirates went even further, turning tattoos into living talismans. Sailors believed in charms against drowning, and tattoos became part of that superstition. A popular design was the pig and the rooster, animals often transported in wooden crates on ships. Because those crates floated when ships sank, sailors believed pigs and roosters never drowned. By tattooing these animals on their feet, pirates hoped the same protection would apply to them. Was it foolish? Maybe. But when storms swallowed entire fleets, who could blame them for clinging to any magic that promised survival? Pirate tattoos also carried the raw energy of revenge. Consider the skull and crossbones. Today, it's sad. But to pirates, it was deadly serious. A man who marked himself with a skull wasn't just advertising death, he was binding himself to it. The skull was an oath. I am already dead, and so I fear nothing. To see an enemy charging with that mark blazing on his chest was enough to send shivers through hardened soldiers. It wasn't only intimidation, it was psychological warfare carved into the body. Pirates turned themselves into living specters, walking symbols of doom. There's a curious irony here. In a world where literacy was rare, tattoos became pirate writing. Most couldn't keep journals or letters. Ink on paper faded, burned, or was lost at sea. Ink on skin remained. A dagger on the chest could mean I killed a man here. A star on the arm might mean I crossed the equator. A coin tattoo could mark a share of treasure once won. Each image carried a meaning, a memory, a story. But it was a language only they could read. To outsiders, it was mystery. To insiders, it was biography. And that secrecy mattered. Pirates lived in a constant dance between visibility and invisibility. Their flags announced terror, but their identities had to vanish in ports. Tattoos balanced those opposites. They could reveal or conceal, depending on who looked. Among allies, they shouted. Among enemies, they whispered. Tattoos became masks, both revealing and hiding. They gave pirates power over how they were seen. And for men hunted by every empire, control over perception was everything. One forgotten aspect of pirate tattoos is how much they connected to myth. Many sailors inked sea creatures, krakens, whales, sharks. These weren't just decorations. They were symbols of the monsters that haunted their nightmares. Some tattoos acted as warnings. A shark on the leg, daring fate to strike. Others acted as wards. A kraken etched on the chest, as if taming the beast by carrying it. Pirates made their fears visible, turning terror into armor. And maybe that was the point. What you wear proudly can't be used against you. But perhaps the most unsettling idea is that some tattoos were maps. Legends tell of pirates hiding directions to buried treasure in ink, disguising them as patterns of stars, waves, or serpents. Imagine a man whose chest, when unfolded, matched the coastline of an island. Imagine a serpent whose coils aligned with river bends. Is it true? The evidence is thin. But the legends persist, whispered for centuries. And isn't that the power of myth, that even the possibility is enough to keep us searching? The story of pirate tattoos is also a story of pain. The process was so brutal that it forged a kind of ritual toughness. Men endured searing needles and infections to earn their marks. To have many tattoos was a statement. I have endured pain and survived. Some pirates even tattooed their eyelids, their lips, their fingers, places unimaginably sensitive. It wasn't just madness, it was devotion. Devotion to the life they chose, devotion to the brotherhood, devotion to being remembered as something other than ordinary. We must also remember the global exchange that tattoos represented. Pirates were wanderers, crossing oceans, encountering cultures from Africa, Asia, the Americas. They borrowed symbols from Polynesian warriors, Chinese sailors, West African tribes. Every mark was a piece of stolen knowledge, a fragment of another world. Pirate tattoos were cultural patchworks, collages of global influence. In a strange way, pirates became walking museums of human belief. And though they lived by theft and blood, they carried with them a kind of unintended anthropology, preserving fragments of traditions they barely understood. Consider, too, the irony that tattoos, once signs of savagery, now mainstream. Today, anchors and swallows decorate the arms of people who may have never seen the sea. But their roots lie in pirate decks, in storms and battles. Modern tattoos carry echoes of the same defiance, the same hunger for meaning. The pirate spirit lives on in ink, even in people who don't realize it. Every time someone chooses a skull, a compass, or a serpent, they echo choices made centuries ago by men who had nothing but the sea and their skin. But here is where reflection creeps in. What do tattoos really mean? For pirates, they were life compressed into symbols. For us, they are fashion, art, self-expression. The contrast is striking. We live in a world where permanence is optional, where images can be deleted with a click. Pirates lived in a world where permanence was survival. To mark themselves was to seize control in a life otherwise controlled by storms, captains, and gallows. They couldn't erase their choices. They embraced them instead. And maybe that's why pirate tattoos still fascinate us. They remind us of a courage we rarely face, the courage to live marked forever by what we've done, yet we shouldn't romanticize too much. Some pirate tattoos were ugly, crude, mistakes made by drunken hands in filthy holds. Some became infected, rotted, killed. Not every mark was glorious. Some were desperate. Some were shameful. But perhaps that imperfection makes them more human. They weren't art galleries. They were scars, reminders that life at sea was messy, bloody, unpredictable. And in that chaos, tattoos thrived because chaos itself was their language. One last thought before we move on. Imagine being a pirate at the end of your life, captured, chained, awaiting execution. Stripped of weapons, stripped of freedom, stripped even of comrades. What remains? The ink. The tattoos are the last armor, the last story, the last rebellion. When the rope tightens, the marks remain, declaring to the world, I lived by my own code, and you cannot erase it. In those final moments, when the hangman's shadow loomed over them, many pirates must have found strange comfort in their tattoos. They had spent their lives hunted, betrayed, scarred, and yet their bodies told the truth they wanted remembered. The ink was their defiance, etched into eternity. Even if their names were forgotten, their marks spoke louder than any confession. And that is perhaps the most haunting legacy of all. Pirates became their tattoos, and their tattoos became their immortality. Some historians argue that pirate tattoos are among the earliest examples of identity claimed by the marginalized. Think about it. These men had no country, no citizenship worth protecting, no families who would defend their names in court. But they had their skin. By marking it, they declared, "This is who I am, this is what I have done, and you cannot rewrite it." That is a radical act, especially in a time when society tried to erase or condemn them. The tattoos said, "I exist, I matter, I leave a trace." Even in rebellion, even in infamy, they sought permanence. And yet, not all tattoos were meant to be read so clearly. Some were riddles. Imagine a sailor with 3 dots inked on his wrist. Was it a symbol of Trinity? Was it a code for his crew? Or perhaps just a mark made in drunken boredom? We don't know. That mystery is part of the fascination. Because tattoos, unlike flags or letters, rarely came with explanations. They were personal languages, private symbols displayed in public, puzzles meant to be understood only by the initiated. Outsiders saw ink. Insiders saw entire stories. But pirates weren't just storytellers, they were mythmakers. When one man tattooed a kraken on his chest, it wasn't just about the sea monster. It was about embodying terror itself. To wear a myth was to become the myth. It blurred the line between man and legend. A pirate wasn't just a thief on the sea. He was a creature larger than life, a living nightmare carved in ink. Every tattoo added to the theater of fear. When enemies saw a pirate's skin crawling with serpents and skulls, they weren't fighting a man, they were fighting the embodiment of death, chaos, and the ocean's rage. Of course, not everyone understood these marks. To European society, tattoos were shocking, barbaric, even sinful. Church officials warned that tattooing desecrated the body given by God. Courts sometimes used tattoos as proof of criminality. To be tattooed was to be marked forever as deviant. But for pirates, this stigma was part of the appeal. If the world already condemned them, why not embrace it fully? Tattoos became a proud declaration of separation. We are not you, we are something else, something you cannot control. And here lies a paradox. The very thing that made tattoos scandalous in polite society gave them power in pirate society. The outlawed became the sacred. The condemned became the celebrated. What others saw as sin, pirates saw as salvation. The contrast is striking, and it shows how rebellion can turn stigma into strength. The mark that was supposed to shame them became the mark that gave them pride. One of the most enduring images is the sailor's swallow tattoo. To most, it's just a bird, but to pirates, it carried deep meaning. Swallows always return home, no matter how far they travel. For men who might never return, who might rot beneath foreign waves, the swallow was hope carved in ink. Some believed it would guide their souls home, even if their bodies never made it. When you think about it, it's heartbreaking. These were men who lived violently, died violently, yet still longed for home. The swallow was the softest of all pirate tattoos, a whisper of yearning beneath the roar of cannons. There's another layer to tattoos as memory. Pirates had no monuments, no graves carefully tended. Most were dumped into the sea or buried in unmarked sand. Tattoos were their memorials. Each mark remembered a lover, a ship, a raid, a storm survived. Each mark was a gravestone, written in flesh. When they died, those gravestones vanished. But for as long as they lived, their very bodies were living cemeteries of memory. It's a haunting thought, to carry all your dead with you, day after day, carved into your own skin. And what about the rumors of magical tattoos? Sailors whispered that certain symbols could protect against drowning, bullets, or bad luck. Crosses over the heart, suns on the chest, serpents coiled on the legs. Did pirates believe in magic? Perhaps not in the way we imagine. But when you live a life balanced on the knife of death, belief itself becomes a weapon. If ink could give you courage, if it could steady your hand in battle, then maybe it did have power. Not mystical power, but psychological power. And sometimes that was more dangerous than any spell. Let's not forget the artistry, crude as it was. Pirates were not trained tattooists. They used needles of bone or iron, inks made from soot, charcoal, even crushed gunpowder. Lines were jagged, images rough. But that rawness was part of the power. These weren't polished decorations, they were scars turned into stories. Every shaky line carried the sting of pain, the memory of infection, the smell of blood and rum. The tattoos were alive with the suffering that created them. And maybe that's why they endure in our imagination. They feel real, raw, unpolished, like the pirates themselves. What do pirate tattoos teach us today? That identity is always contested. That meaning can be taken from stigma. That art can be carved out of pain. And that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones not written on paper, but on flesh. Pirates remind us that expression isn't always clean, safe, or pretty. Sometimes it's bloody, chaotic, and defiant. And maybe that's why tattoos still carry an edge of rebellion centuries later. Think about the modern world. Tattoos are everywhere now. Athletes, actors, teachers, neighbors. They've become mainstream. But their roots trace back to sailors and outcasts, to rebels and wanderers, to pirates who marked themselves outside the boundaries of society. Every modern tattoo, in some way, carries that heritage. The ink on our skin today whispers with echoes of cannons, storms, and gallows. We may not recognize it, but the ghost of the pirate is still there. And here's the final twist. Pirate tattoos didn't just survive, they won. What once shocked the world has now conquered it. The outlawed art became global culture. The condemned marks became celebrated fashion. Pirates lost their battles, their ships, their lives, but their tattoos lived on. They outlasted the empires that tried to erase them. And in that sense, the pirates achieved a strange kind of immortality. Not through gold, not through power, but through ink. So the next time you see a skull tattoo, or an anchor, or a swallow, remember this: you are looking at more than art. You are looking at a story centuries old. a rebellion carved in pain, a secret code carried across oceans. You are looking at the whispers of men who lived on borrowed time, who faced death with laughter, who made their skin their final legacy. You are looking at the secrets of pirate tattoos and, perhaps, in a way, at the human hunger to be remembered, even when the world wants you forgotten. Pirates lived fast, died young, and left no graves. But their tattoos remain, and through them, their stories still breathe. Subscribe for more hidden histories, because some secrets are too powerful to stay buried.